Call the meeting to order. Welcome to the February 20th meeting of the Lee Select Board. The first item on the agenda are the minutes, the open session minutes of February 6th, 2024.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we accept the minutes of February 6, 2024 as written.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, public comment. Kathy?
Well, good evening.
Evening.
Kathy Hall, Lee Youth Commission and Lee Library Corporator. First, the ice rink.
The water
Lee-
pond.
The water pond. The Lee Youth Commission is working with the DPW and the Lee Fire Department to have skating at the park, but it's still not ready for skating. Please check the town website and the Lee Youth Commission Facebook page for updates. So hopefully, maybe something will happen tomorrow, and only tomorrow before the temperatures go in the 40s and 50s. I don't know, but anyways. Or we could just have, what is it, that polo club?
Yeah.
Right, we could
Polar,
just.
polar.
Polar, right, whatever. So our second Saturday event for March 9th is Kids versus Kids Family Feud Game Night from 5:30 to 7 p.m. at Crossway Tower Gym. The event is free and open to all children ages 6 to 12. Kids versus Kids Family Feud Game Night offers a unique opportunity for children to participate in a live-action version of Family Feud. Participants will form teams and compete to guess the most popular responses to game survey questions and earn points for their respective teams. To participate, advance registration is required. Interested families can contact the Lee Youth Commission via email at youthcommission@lee.ma.us. Third, Lee Library is hosting a Pokemon Club party tomorrow, February 21st, from noon to 2 p.m. So I'm reading off of their little doodad, okay? Free pizza, Pokemon movie, for beginners to advance, free cards, come dressed as your favorite character. And fourth, at the Library on Friday, February 23rd at 11 a.m. is Saving Daisy, and again from their poster, Jazzy, Saving Jazzy, a musical and visual echo fantasy. Special guest, Annie Anaconda, the singing snake, Jazzy LaFleur, the most beautiful flower in the world, and the ghost of King Nut in Muchinkamen, and that is, again, this Friday at Lee Library. For further information on events at the library,
Recording in progress.
Sorry, Kathy.
that's okay.
You're good.
So for further information on events at the library, call 243-0385 or email lee@cwmars.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing nobody. Moving on, first order of general business, the continued discussion on the upland disposal facility reuse.
We might want to take things a little out of turn here, Mr. Chair, because we're having some difficulties on Zoom,
Okay.
and our UDF
The representative.
representative is coming on Zoom, so
It's joining again now,
is he
Sean.
joining? It prompted me to, it kicked me out over here, so I'm going to try to put the code back in and see what happens. Oops. Put in the right code. Let's try that.
Okay.
Okay, now it said we ended. Bear with us.
I'm not gonna watch because I don't wanna know.
I'm with you.
If that doesn't work, go ahead to.
Recording in
There we
progress.
go.
I was gonna say, I may just cover my
All right,
eyes.
this meeting is recorded, got it.
Right.
Let's see
So
if we
did I
can
boot
get,
everybody?
We got
is
two
it
there.
Andrew?
Yep.
Yeah.
See if we can get him back on here.
I think we do.
Couple clicks, and Andrew, if you could unmute yourself. If he's with us here, it looks like he
Nobody
should be. There he is.
Yeah, I just called back in. Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Thank you,
Fine.
Andrew. Okay, so we're here to discuss the continued discussion on the UDF reuse. I guess I've talked about it with Chris, I've talked about it with a few other people, and I can't think of personally, and I haven't heard of any suggestions for reuse other than if the facility ends up being built, simply capping it and planting native ground cover over it. I can't imagine that the people of Lee or the general region are going to be up there with hiking paths and or golf courses or solar fields or any other use. I can't imagine anybody's going to want to go anywhere near the place. That's my personal opinion and the opinion of those that I've spoken with. Chris?
Yeah, and Bob, if I just to kind of reiterate what we said last time, the initial, GE will be doing a permit application soon with a plan. This will be a small portion of that they want to include the, kind of our general thoughts on what could happen 15 years down the road. Part of it is that a consultation with officials from the town of Lee. So what we kind of mentioned last time, specific planting and the idea of pollinator-friendly plants in the area. So I know the board wanted to speak to Andrew directly, so I don't know if you wanted to sum up anything else, Andrew, at this point that we talked about, and I know the board has some questions as well, so.
Sure. Yeah, that's helpful feedback. As Chris mentioned, we have the final design document due on the 28th, which is obviously next week. And, we're doing, we're all complying and doing what the EPA's permit says and requires. So I think if that's the decision, we can obviously write language in that document. I think we can probably propose some specific types of seed or a seed mixture. Obviously, there may need to be adjustments made by the time it's actually applied in the future, but I think we can describe the approach in enough detail that when it comes time to implement that there'll be an agreement, or essentially implementing the decision to plant those types of species, which I think in general makes a lot of sense. There's going to need to be future maintenance, like things like mowing and sampling of wells and other activities. So I think some kind of passive activity fits well with what can work there. So I think that approach makes sense to me.
Gordon?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Gordon Bailey, Andrew. I have a couple of questions. One is, what's GE's experience with topping off this type of a facility in other places around the country that you've done this?
So let me understand, what do you mean by topping off?
Well, in other words,
You
the
mean-
top, once you build this UDF, if it gets
The
built
cap,
the way
right?
it is, the cap,
Right.
what experience do you have in other areas through GE? What have you done? Any other ideas other than the ones we've mentioned, and how are you maintaining those systems?
Yeah, so in Pittsfield, it's kind of similar to what have been discussing. It's a native type ground cover. It needs to be mowed, annually or semi-annually, depending on the growth. And you don't want trees or shrubs to grow, things like that. So there's a seed mixture that's been applied that essentially doesn't allow erosion to take place, and then we mow it at least annually and maintain it. And obviously we have to do inspections and things like that. So that's the most, obviously the closest example. I think there's some other locations in the country that uses or that have applied solar panels, like a passive solar panel type approach. And not just necessarily GE involvement, but that's a fairly typical type of reuse scenario that's applied to certain projects, including, I believe, some within EPA Region 1. So those, in my experience, those are really kind of the two examples of what's been done.
And is there, in this plan, is there fencing around the cap to keep people out? Or signage about what it is, or, because there was a question brought up about that. And then the other, in conjunction with that, how many years under this permit is GE required to maintain that particular area before it gets, maintenance of that section gets turned over to another group, and what group would that be?
Okay, so the signage point, it's a fairly large document. I don't remember if it specifically has signage requirements, although I think we can add something on that. Make sure, I might miss one of your questions. The question on the number of years, so GE will be responsible for maintaining this in perpetuity, so there is no point in time at which it's turned over to anyone or things are changed. And your other question was about fencing. So
Yeah.
we've been installing and we'll anticipate having a fence around the larger construction area, just because there's going to be earth moving and, bulldozers and front end loaders, et cetera, moving material. We don't obviously want people essentially in the middle of a construction site. I think later the size of the fence may be reduced to some degree, but I think our approach would be to have a fence either around the perimeter of the majority of the perimeter of our property, or in some cases it may be shrunk in a little bit to be closer to the UDF footprint itself, with like the surrounding I guess we call the kind of the service area where we have stormwater detention basins and things like that. So hopefully that answers your question on the fencing.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. At this point, that's all my questions. I'll wait and see what it says, and what your report says.
Andrew, this is Sean Renier here. I'm wondering, sort of to branch off from what you just kind of mentioned. So the UDF itself is, my understanding is that it's around 20 acres or so. Is that correct? I could be wrong.
I believe yeah, I think that's the maximum that was put in, I believe the footprint that was put into the permit. I think when you see the document next week, the actual footprint of the UDF is going to be smaller than that.
Okay.
Anyways.
So I'm wondering specifically, are we talking about reuse of just the UDF, also known as the dump, right? Are we talking about that? Because GE also owns more property than what will just be the dump up there, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Primarily the area of the southern half, or more 60%, is predominantly going to be occupied by the UDF and access road around it and the stormwater detention basins. But as you look more towards the north, which it's going towards Woods Pond, there's an area that the GE owns that won't be part of the actual UDF itself. So there will be some additional property within that parcel.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I'm wondering, is that can we explore, because it is, right now people use that as a recreational area for walking and biking and whatnot. I'm wondering if we can use some of that area that isn't the UDF if for something more than just a pollinator habitat that, it's not going to be located on the dump. We can create some distinction there and increase what people already use. And what I would hope would continue to be used as a more of a recreational area as you kind of get right on the pond there. So is that sort of the same? Are we talking about that area as well in this reuse discussion, or is it are we just focused on the UDF?
Yeah, I think the permit text description really focuses on the UDF, but I do think that we're willing to discuss and consider like some kind of, like you're calling kind of a passive recreational type use, like maybe it's a walking path kind of parallel to Woodland Road, or that joins up with the property or the road on the edge of Woods Pond or something like that. So that's a little, it's a little different than what the permit says, but I think if you have a desire to explore that as, what kind of option or an option like that, I think we can certainly discuss that.
Yeah, I'd hope that we could at some point, or at least, within the quality of life plan or some sort of aspect other than just, the UDF reuse, because I think we're all on the same page. But if we can create some space, that's clean, that's been remediated, it doesn't have, it's not a part of the UDF that can be used for something else, I think we'd all be interested in what that might look like. But yeah, I think the pollinator, I don't know if you guys have anything to add on that.
Dog park, or
maybe it might be,
or
who
a
knows,
community
right?
garden
There's
if it's
so many-
not part of the UDF.
Right, and I think there's enough acreage up there that we can, if this does ultimately happen, that we can create some distinction and between those two areas, so that we're not melding that together. So yeah, I think that we'll explore that further. Is this going to be, so we'll have a chance to comment once this gets released in the end, correct?
It'll be comment, and also SKIO will make specific recommendations on what type of like perennial plants that can be put there, that sort of thing. I did want to mention that directly to the north, I think is all wetland area, if I'm reading the map correctly, and then a little further up, there is a section that I think is forested right now.
Yeah.
But that has a lot more flexibility because we're not worried about roots going into a line or anything like that.
Well, and I would imagine that through this whole process, when GE's talking about hydraulic dredging and the proximity, some of that area might be disturbed by those activities, so it might lend itself to something like that in the future. That's just where I was going at, but for right now, we're really just focused on the UDF itself, which I think we're all on the same page with that. So that's all I have. Bob.
Andrew, Bob Jones, a quick question, going back to the care and maintenance of the UDF should it be built. You say that it's the GE will have to maintain it in perpetuity. And I'm just wondering that GE has changed its structure in the past and may very well do it in the future. I've read that they're, whether correctly or not, that they are breaking up into 3 divisions. One is going to be medical. I know they sold their airline division in 2021. Going down the road, 15, 20, 30 years down the road, how can we be assured that should the UDF be built, that this is not going to get lost somewhere, and it's going to end up, the responsibility for this is going to disappear somewhere in some corporate entity? I mean, forever is a long time, and that's what I'm hearing when I'm hearing in perpetuity. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I understand. So thanks for the question. I understand the rationale, what's behind understanding your question and what your thoughts and concerns. I mean, General Electric's going to continue to exist, even if parts of the company in the past have been spun out into separate entities. But the obligations and not, for this site and other sites are going to remain with General Electric, and there's not going to be any, we're legally obligated. We signed, the permit's been given to us. It's a legal, we have a legal document. It's just going to be, I don't think anyone in the community or, even EPA will notice anything different in the future. It's the same team implementing the work, and that's going to continue for, a very long time.
All right, thank you very much. I just wanted that to be a matter of public record.
Well, also, I think we have to remember, whoever thought Sears and Roebuck would be gone,
That's true, too.
you know? They were the biggest thing ever from the 1800s on, and yet they are no more. So I think that's partly why we're raising this kind of question. Well, down the road, 50 years, 100 years, things happen. Anyway, thank you.
Chris, do you have
You're
anything
welcome.
else?
Nope.
No
We're good.
further questions? Any comment from the public? You want to come up?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to speak briefly to the topic.
Bill, if you could just...
I'm Bill Matthews
thank
from
you.
54 High Street here in Lee. 20 years ago, a report was written as part of the thesis work at UMass Amherst, the Center for Economic Development. And its title was From Lane to Lee, a Quarry's Potential. It's about a 90-page report, and it examines alternatives for the town of Lee to acquire the Lane site, the Lane construction site, once Lane was finished with mining sand. And I've found that most people I talk to are not aware of the report. So I'd like to make a copy, at least, of the executive summary available, and I have a link to its place on the UMass website. For while the Rest of River agreement characterizes the proposed dump as disturbed, and then goes on to use that label to excuse disturbing it some more. In contrast, the report I'm talking about observes that Lee, as a town, has irrevocably entered the post-industrial era and treats the site as a prime candidate for restoration of its flora and fauna to some approximation of its original state. It foresees nature trails, bike paths, and other recreational use. As well, it recognizes Woods Pond as a link in the Northeast migratory network for water birds. And it talks extensively about protecting the natural habitat, noting its position on top of what is probably the largest aquifer in Berkshire County. And it proposes that we think about or consider an educational role in the form of an eco-science nature center. So I want to leave you with the executive summary and the online link and commend it to your reading.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring that material in my rush to get out the door, but I'll see it to it that Chris gets a copy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for your research. Okay, any further discussion on the proposed use for the UDM?
We have another hand.
Yes, please.
I'm Shirley Miller from Stockbridge. I think it's admirable that you're trying to control how the PCBs are handled, but there is new technology out that makes it possible to treat the PCBs in the river, and also plantings along the river banks that will take care of the PCBs. And I think that this would be advisable to do before the dredging and all that is done, which is going to create havoc on the river and the rest of people up downstream. And as I say, I think that ought to be considered first. And I understand you want to put in the place the protections on the other things, but there are plants that also take care of the PCBs in the soil. So,
Yeah, we received your communication. I don't think you're gonna find anybody in Lee that would disagree with you.
Yeah.
We are somewhat constrained by the existing agreement that was signed by a
Yes,
previous
but
select
the
board.
existing agreement also does say
Yeah.
that you can use the bioremediation.
It
Yeah.
does. Getting them to do it is something else.
Yeah, and it is something that we push for in
Well-
all of our comments to them to
Well, I
take a
wanna
look
say
at
that,
this.
you know, Stockbridge is behind you too, and
Yeah.
we can, anything we could do to help. I think Lennox would come along too if you tried to put this forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are in communication. In fact, I'm having dinner with Patrick on Friday night, and we talk frequently about this very thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
So
well,
We brought in some companies that
Yes.
that do that sort of work as well.
Yeah, aside from like plant bioremediation, we brought in the EcoSpheres people that do, I don't know exactly how to explain their process, but it's a similar thing. They can extract these in place with their solutions, really.
But there's a number of different ways.
Yeah,
I know
right.
that the Beat News, what's her, Jane Wynn? I forget her first name. They're chemists, and they're really up on all of the latest technology and know what's the best kind to use and whatnot. So as I say, I really think that you should be pushing GE
You-
and the EPA.
No, you're absolutely right. What Sean just said is absolutely so. There are a number of different ways of doing it. It actually changes the chemical compound of the PCB
Yeah.
to make it less harmful or
Yeah.
harmless to human beings. There has been a cleanup done. PCBs are not far different from Agent Orange that was used in the Vietnam War. They've cleaned up the airport at Saigon that was saturated with this stuff, and it's safe for humans now
Yeah.
using these methods. Was it District 1 of the EPA?
Yeah,
Yeah.
District 1.
They are a tough nut to crack. Not every EPA district is the same, and it's not all administrated the same. District 1 is a tough nut to crack, and they have simply said that the remediation, say, within the river itself, is completely out of the question. That's what we've heard thus
You know,
far.
they have a new regulation though that's
Yes.
Yes.
just going in place, and I think it's more friendly to,
They haven't, the EPA hasn't recognized those methods as being acceptable.
They
is
need,
my-
I forget, I think they called it like a QAP or something. They need, the EPA
Oh, QAP,
needs.
yeah.
A QAP, yeah. The EPA needs to release this. They need to recognize through that document these technologies will work, and they haven't done that. So that's essentially what we're up against, is in a nutshell.
push them to use the Housatonic as a test for, you know. If it doesn't work, you can go back to the other.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we've been trying to figure out a way to utilize politics to pressure this, and it hasn't been great so far. You know, politics and money, that's what runs things around here, so we'll see. You know, we are pushing for it though, as the other board members have mentioned.
Well, anything we can do to help.
All right, well, thank you
so
very
much,
much.
Shirley. Thank you. Any further discussion on this matter?
Yes, sir.
Andrew, thank you very much for being with us this evening, and I'm sure we'll be talking again in the near future. I guess Andrew's gone.
Yeah, it must be.
Okay, moving on. Berkshire Regional Transit Authority, talk about an additional Main Street bus stop.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good
We're
evening.
back. I'd like to introduce now Bob Malinetti and Raleigh Kane from Berkshire Regional Transit, and I will sit.
Come up to the front.
Thank you for having us again.
Sure, sure. So, have you considered an alternate route like in front of the Uraldi building rather than just on Main Street or sign, or what's your proposal as we go forward?
Our proposal is still good on Main Street because of visibility for customers. We do stop right up front. If we could have one spot in front of Xavier's past the entrance and exit from the parking area. That way the bus could stop there. The bus stops are right next to each other. The more visibility we have, the more revenue the town receives to offset the costs of running that route, and the more ridership that we have. And I know we originally thought a few spaces, but if we could get one over towards the farther side.
Go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt if you.
No, I was gonna ask, has anybody spoken to
Yeah.
Xavier's?
I have.
Yes,
And
okay.
they are not anxious to see you take up one of their parking places. I don't know if you folks have reached out to the Xaviers so that they understand the timeframes, because we did talk last time about a possibility of a bus stop during very restricted hours, because you were doing just a couple stops a day, to see if that was an option. I don't know how you felt about that. And the other is perhaps just beyond Xavier's, where in front of Kelly's, which is a little less often used, especially in the mornings, in your morning run. Possibly there's some issues about some occasional afternoons. I think you said 5:30 or 7:30, something like that. But have you reached out to either of those two businesses? Because it seems like that would be your best bet, is to talk to them also, to talk to them directly about what you feel your impact would be on their businesses.
What's that?
Do you want to talk about it too as well?
Well, certainly.
Sure. So the so Raleigh Kane, I'm the general manager. Nice to meet you all. A bit of a clarification from last time we spoke. So the express bus is new to Lee. However, the existing Rev 2 in Lee would also use this stop. So kind of with our amended request, we have one space in front of Xavier's that is to the south of the entrance to the Price Chopper, and then we would use the light post as the bus stop sign. So one space is really the minimum that we would need. And then, like Bob mentioned, visibility drives ridership. The more ridership the routes have, the less they cost. Ultimately. But
So
being
would it
on
be
roads,
time restrictions, or is it just an always takeover spot?
it would be 17 feet of bus stop forever.
Right, okay,
That'd be our request.
all the time, so you don't have time frames. One time we talked about time.
Because the
Time
express,
frames,
the
and I just-
express is that. in the
Yes,
morning,
so, 'cause
two-
I haven't
2 in
heard
the
this
morning
part.
and 2 in the evening.
Okay.
That's the new route, but the Route 2 is every hour and has been for 20-ish years, 25 years.
Chris?
Chair, would that be eliminating then the one at the mobile station, if you're using this all the time, or across the street from here at
They're-
Tabian's?
They're far enough apart to satisfy 2 stops.
Okay.
It's a bit out of walking distance between both.
Would the express bus also still be using the mobile station?
So the express bus only uses the Main Street stop. That's the only
Okay.
stop.
So, but did you in fact speak with either Xavier's or Kelly's?
No, we haven't spoken with either of them because it's really just the board we gotta go through. We haven't talked to
Well, to
them.
satisfy us, we have to make sure that our merchants are also somewhat on board, somewhat. I mean, it is our decision. But, I'd like to know more about the impacts, how they, and like them to express to you directly what their concerns are. And you may have ways that you've alleviated those concerns in other communities that we're unaware of. But it'd be great if you could do that and have a discussion, at least open the discussion.
And if we could get contact information
Yeah.
for
Oh,
who the
absolutely.
best person is, we
Sure.
should talk to.
You're right, we can, Mohammed is probably the best one to talk to. Yeah, no problem, we can do that. they might even be more interested in you actually entering the Price Stop Park and making a loop around and taking a couple of their parallel parts instead of on Main Street. I don't know. That's something that you would have to discuss with them, if there's a loop.
That would be
That's
private
tough, though,
property,
because I'm
yeah.
not
Oh,
sure
okay.
that we
Oh,
can,
okay.
yeah.
Well, that's their property. That's
Um,
Zabian's, the first 15 by 30.
But, and I'm not sure what's gonna ultimately happen with that development there too. Is that
That's-
always gonna be,
Yeah. Yeah.
an option for
And
them?
that well, that's something they'll have to discuss with them, because
Right,
I
yeah.
actually know more about that, but I'd rather not discuss it without the
Sure,
Zabians
yeah,
being here.
yeah. Yeah.
Just from my curiosity, I know they're unmetered parking spaces, just a 2-hour time limit, but is there any data available for the occupancy rate of those parking spaces?
Not that we don't have meters, you know.
So
As far as you mean like when cars are parking there versus,
Yeah, so
what
it's,
time frames
how
and
many
that
per
sort of
day?
thing, yeah.
Something that we have discussed with a lot of other communities is that when non-metered parking is transferred into a bus stop, it becomes effectively a metered parking space
Mhm.
without having to
Understood.
be. So right now, they're not collecting any revenue. Without having a parking meter installed, you're then collecting revenue in the same space.
Again, we have to balance that with the concerns of the,
Sure.
of the merchants.
I
And it would
understand.
be great if,
Yeah.
if you could let them know your needs, and then they can let you know their needs, and
Mhm.
maybe we can find some middle ground. Well, I mean, we don't want to be, we're not trying to pass the buck. We just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for all parties concerned.
Sure.
We can do that.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're interested, I mean, I'm more than willing to, because I've spoken with them about this originally, more than willing to go with you if you want to meet and have a board member with that, whatever works for you.
Sure.
If you feel that's something that would be helpful, more than happy to be there.
Okay.
Or one of the other board members can also be there,
Mhm.
whatever, just not more than one of us.
sounds like you just volunteered
Not
yourself.
necessarily. So anyway, I just thought that would be helpful for everybody to hear the same thing at the same time,
Sure.
so we don't enter into any kind of misunderstanding down the road. That would
Okay,
be
sure.
helpful.
And Chris, you can
Yeah.
send us that information.
Contact.
Email,
Yeah,
contact
you still have
information.
my contact information.
Well, yeah, no, can you email me or?
Oh, sure, okay.
Yeah, yeah, and then
We'll
that
get
way
you
we
his
can reach
number.
out, find out when they would
Exactly.
want
Sure.
to talk, and
That
then we
would
can
work.
reach out to someone on the board, find out when they
All right.
would want to
Very
join
good.
us.
Well, that would be good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And I
much.
can't imagine that there is, not to get back to your revenue point, how much does a town get for a bus stop? I've never heard of this being a revenue issue.
So
That's all.
every fair dollar collected in Lee directly offsets Lee's assessment at the end of the year from the authority. So there's a financial incentive to gain ridership effectively in every community in the authority.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that happened, so it's nice to let the public know that happens also.
So when your cherry sheet comes and there's a little line for transportation, it's offset by the amount of fares that's
Gotcha.
collected
Okay,
in that town.
yeah, didn't realize that. Interesting.
Not many folks do, so that's why we
No,
have
well,
been saying that a lot.
it's good that you pointed out, but, you know,
Yeah.
I can't say that'll sway my decision heavily either way, but, okay.
Fair enough.
Anyway, well,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, moving on, we're looking to sign a warrant for the presidential preference primaries. We're talking about Super Tuesday, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we, is it just, yeah, that we all sign the warrant for the presidential preference primaries.
I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion?
I don't have any discussion, but for everybody, this is for the presidential primaries, March 5th, right? This is the day that
Yes.
we're
Yep.
talking about
Crossway
here.
Village,
Crossway Village,
Seven to
7 to
eight.
8, the polls will be open. so.
AM to 8 PM. Yeah.
Yep.
So we have a motion and a second.
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on. Looking to sign the CDBG joint application with Lennox, the housing rehab program.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to recuse myself from the discussion and the vote on
Okay.
this. If you could make a note of that.
Yeah, so basically, this is going after a community developed block grant. We're partnering with Lennox, looking for that money for housing rehabilitation.
And I've just mentioned, this is a continuation of the one that we partnered with Egremont last year. There's about 150 Lee residents that have applied for the housing rehabilitation, so we definitely have a need to continue.
Okay.
And they definitely look better partnering with multiple communities than individuals, so.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the application for the community development block grant and to allow I believe it's the chair to sign, Chris, or is this?
Yeah.
Chief? Yeah, and to approve the chair to sign.
The second?
He's recused himself.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm sorry, Gordon. I'll make the second then. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, then we now have a temporary sign permit for the Lee Historical Society. Okay. For a 6-by-3-foot sign.
Anybody speak to it? No?
Bill, do you have any
Well,
comments?
you know, I'm making the sign and it isn't 6 by 3.
Oh, 6 square feet, sorry. yes.
It's a sandwich board.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a
very good.
picture of it
Oh, yes,
on the
yes,
next
yes.
page, yeah.
Very good.
Well, Mr. Chairman, since no one's here to speak to it, I don't have a problem with this, so I will make a motion that we approve of this, and it is for one sandwich sign for 2 weeks each for the month of March and May and September and November, and to waive the fee for their special program signs.
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We now have Council on Aging appointments. We have Mary Cody, Susan Johnson, and Ann Stein.
Sterling.
Oh, Sterling.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion that we appoint Mary Cody, Susan Johnson, and Ann Sterling to the Council on Aging.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Now, election worker appointments. We have Jessica Jill Tisdale and Lauren Gagnon.
Mr. Chairman, based on the recommendation of our town clerk, Rachel Armstrong, I'd make a motion that we appoint Jessica Tisdale and Lauren Gagnon as election workers for the town of Lee.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we have a Berkshire gas permit for 55 Franklin Street.
This was a little bit difficult to follow, but I think they're just disconnecting and rerunning a new line from my interpretation, right? I'd make a motion that we approve the permit, the gas permit for replacing a section of gas service at 55 Franklin Street.
I will second that. It looks like they're only disturbing the bituminous sidewalk, that they're not in the road.
Right.
So I think that shouldn't be as big a deal for them to fix up afterwards, so,
It says attempt to bore all blacktop areas.
yeah, yeah.
There's probably a parallel bore there. Yeah. All right, do we have a motion and a second?
I made a motion.
Yeah, second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now, the Town of Lee, the Select Board PCB Advisory Committee, the session of that. Christie, did you want to give an overview of how we come to where we are now with 7 members?
Yeah, so based on comments from the public and from the board at the last meeting, we kept sort of the mission and tasks the same, but expanded the membership for 2 scientists instead of 1, and added a public relations communications position in there for a total of 7 board members. So.
I think that's a great idea, especially the PR communications person, to get some input on that. How do we handle this with the public? Good idea. So do you want to vote on the membership?
Yeah, so at this point, if the board would like to move to create this committee, we can put out information on our website and e-blast that there's openings for that, and then ask people to submit letters of interest. We can bring those back to you probably the second March meeting, if that works. So March 20th, I believe that would be for appointment, if that works for the board. So
Sounds good.
19th, sorry. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, with that explanation, I would make a motion that we vote to create a PCB advisory committee under the direction of the select board in the format that's been laid out here in front of us.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, any topic the chairman cannot reasonably anticipate? I don't have anything. Gordon, Sean, anything?
I have one thing that I wanted to bring up. I wanted to make note that the town has, this last week, lost a longtime volunteer of the town. Now it's Jerry Leapervo. Jerry held many positions in the town. He was on several boards. I know that I dealt with him many times years ago on the Traffic Commission. He also was a many-year member of town representative and represented his district well. Always a person with interesting perspective, calm, very thoughtful in his decision-making. He's the owner of Henry's Electric, and as the owner of Henry's Electric, he sponsored many of our youth basketball teams and other things, and would get them uniforms and whatnot. He also served our community by way of being an active member in the Kiwanis. And the Kiwanis, for those who don't know, years ago used to be heavily sponsor our home building programs out of high school, where I know many contractors and builders and whatnot that have gone through that program, and they really benefited by the support of the Kiwanis, and all that's volunteer work. He also is a 50-year member of Evening Star Lodge, the Masonic group that also tries to help out in the community in various ways. And I'd like to extend our condolences to the extended Leapervo family and wish them well, and by way of them, thank Jerry for his service for all those years. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Well said, Gordon. Thank you very much. Chris, do you have anything?
Yeah, just 2 quick updates. Just the Finance Committee has been meeting weekly on the FY25 budget, hoping to wrap up that by the middle of March. And I did start a draft warrant, which I left copies for the board members to take a look at. So
I'll get you with one suggestion.
okay.
Not for now, but
Okay.
and then we'll discuss it, because we're not ready to vote on it.
Right. Just letting you know we have
Yep.
it in the works. So
Great. Thank you very much.
thanks.
Okay. That's all you have, Chris? That's it?
That's it.
Very good. Our next regular meeting will be March 5th, same time, same place. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.